Welcome to the 2021 Virtual Smart Growth Summit, presented by the Center for Planning Excellence. CPEX is Louisiana's only nonprofit planning organization. We work with communities at all scales, from neighborhoods to parishes, helping them develop a shared vision and a roadmap to achieve that vision. We've now worked in over 50 Louisiana communities and advocate on their behalf for state agencies to develop policies and programs to support local community planning needs. Through all of our work, we champion the power of good planning to build livable, resilient, equitable communities. My name is Preston Castile, and I have the pleasure of moderating today's session, People Making Places, Transformative Placemaking Realized. I'm the Center for Planning Excellence's board chair and the president of Helix Community Schools. I'm originally from Opelousas, Louisiana, and have lived in Baton Rouge for more than 30 years. And I love that Louisiana has so many special and unique towns, cities, communities, and cultures. I'm excited to moderate today's session, dedicated to exploring different tools, resources, and economic strategies to ensure that communities can celebrate and capitalize on the things that make them special places. Before we begin, CPEX would like to thank today's session and gold sponsor, Stone Pigman Walther Whitman, and this session's leadership outreach and gold sponsors, LMA and LMATS. This sponsorship allowed us to reach out to elected officials across the state to make sure they were aware of this valuable discussion we're going to have today, and to provide them with a copy of panelist Ilana Pruss's book. We hope many of those who reached out to are in attendance today. We'd also like to acknowledge all of our members and sponsors who make this event possible, including our platinum sponsors, Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Louisiana, the Power Coalition, and 89.3 WRKF, and our other gold sponsors, American Planning Association, Louisiana Chapter, Hancock Whitney, LSU Ag Center, and Smart Growth America. Closed captioning is provided by AARP. A few housekeeping items. Today's session has been pre-approved for continuing education credits for certified floodplain managers, certified planners, and attorneys. Realtors, architects, landscape architects, engineers, and LEED professionals may self-report credit. To receive credit, please attend the whole session and respond to polling questions at the end. For more information, please visit the Continuing Education tab on our website, summit.cpex.org. You may turn on closed captioning using the button at the bottom of your screen. We're reserving a portion of this session for a panel discussion between our panelists and you, our guests. Please enter your questions into the Q&A using the button at the bottom of your screen. And finally, this session is being recorded and will be available on the CPEX YouTube channel and website. It is my pleasure to facilitate this conversation about the power of placemaking and the potential it holds for communities across our state. We have brought together experts in community planning and revitalization to share place-based strategies for combating familiar struggles like blight and economic stagnation, challenges that affect so many downtowns and historic areas here in Louisiana. In addition to our subject matter experts, we also have two mayors contributing their wisdom to the discussion today to ground our conversation about placemaking in the experiences of real communities in our state. With this impressive lineup, we hope to have an implementation-focused discussion that provides cutting-edge ideas as well as practical guidance to the community leaders listening today. Now, I'm glad to introduce our speakers and responding panelists. Jennifer Esve is a senior fellow for the Brookings Institution Metropolitan Policy Program and the director of the Ann and Robert M. Bass Center for Transformative Placemaking. She is also author of dozens of Brookings publications, including How Transformative Placemaking Investments Can Support the Development of More Vibrant, Connected, and Inclusive Communities. Ilana Pruss is the founder and CEO of Recast City, a consulting firm that works with local leaders to integrate small-scale manufacturing into redevelopment projects and place-based economic development. Her most recent book, Recast Your City: How to Save Your Downtown with Small-Scale Manufacturing, was released earlier this year. Wendy Jackson is Managing Director of the Kresge Foundation's Detroit program, where she leads the foundation's efforts to revitalize Detroit and to strengthen its social and economic fabric. Her work supports organizations providing economic opportunity for low-income people and addresses needs of vulnerable children and families. We're also happy to welcome Mayor Julius Alcindor of Opelousas and Mayor Jennifer Vedrine of Ville Platte, who will follow up with some context about their communities, experiences, and questions for our speakers. Their perspectives will help us understand the challenges and opportunities present in many cities and towns in Louisiana. Without further ado, Jennifer Vey, when you're ready, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Preston. Really appreciate that. And good morning to everyone. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, so bear with me for a second. Okay, great. So thank you so much to all of you for turning in this morning. So what I'm going to do is kind of set things off this morning, focusing my remarks on the concept of transformative placemaking and discussing how and why cities and regions in Louisiana and beyond really ought to consider embracing this theory of change in order to expand economic opportunities for people and places. So 3 years ago, actually 3 years ago this month, the Brookings Institution launched the Auntie and Robert M. Bass Center for Transformative Placemaking with the mission of inspiring public and private and civic sector leaders to make transformative place investments that generate widespread social and economic benefits. So I want to talk a little bit today about why we established the center and why these reasons are important to you and to your work. So in the first place, while place has always mattered to people and economies, new technologies, demographic trends, and economic shifts are altering both the needs and the demands for place. We really need to better understand those demands and what they mean for our communities, both now and in the future. Second, we already know these trends are having many positive impacts, but the benefits are not being equally distributed. Rather, the digital economy is simply leaving too many people and too many places behind. And so the third reason we created the center is that if market and demographic trends are to work for more people and more places, then public and private and civic sector leaders need transformative investments in places and in placemaking to really be a key part of their solution set. Okay, so first, we know that new technologies and demographic trends and economic shifts are changing the needs and the demands for place. So first, a little history. So, place, that is the hyper-local, has always mattered to people and to the economy in ways that are constantly shifting and evolving. So if we think back in the 19th century, America's cities grew to become not only centers of commerce and of trade, but powerhouses of invention and of industry. And then within these cities, the variable needs of artisans and retailers and other businesses, of large manufacturing firms and their workers, all determined where and how they clustered, and in turn, giving rise to the growth of our downtowns and our industrial districts. Rural towns, meanwhile, still served as centers for agricultural trade, and they were the places that served rural residents' needs for goods and for services. Of course, we know that the demands for place dramatically changed during the 20th century. The advent of the automobile, coupled with new infrastructure investments, housing and land use policies, and the changing demands of industry, led to the move of people and jobs from central cities to greener and often whiter suburban pastures, while leaving many urban and rural communities in economic and in fiscal decline. So this changing relationship between place and economy over this time period has given us the varied patterns of concentration, of dispersion, and of racial and economic segregation that still characterize our landscape today. But these patterns aren't static. Just as with past innovations, today's digital revolution is enabling the creation of new products and services that have the potential to improve our health and our environment and our quality of life. But the digital revolution is also causing really disruptive impacts on our growth and our development patterns that we really just need to be paying attention to. So first, the desire for greater collaboration amongst firms and workers, together with the rise in the sharing economy, is causing higher demand for levels of density and proximity that facilitate interaction and exchange of ideas, as well as physical items. Think, about Airbnb, housing, of transportation, think Lyft and Uber. And while COVID-19 has obviously dampened a lot of these trends around, concentration and collaboration in ways that we can't fully predict, these are broad forces that we're pretty confident are going to outlive the pandemic. Further, as more, and of course with COVID, more shoppers go online, the country's retail landscape is being dramatically shaken. But there are also a whole bunch of other trends at play in this sector, with the real estate industry also really visibly struggling to deliver brick and mortar retail product in the right locations. So many establishments located in auto-centric suburban shopping malls are becoming obsolete and in need of a new purpose. At the same time, while retail in walkable areas is in high demand, only about 12% of retail square footage in the top 30 metro areas is actually located in these kind of areas. So these trends are going to have some really potent impacts, continue to have potent impacts on how and where we shop, and for many, many employees in this sector, where they work. And then finally, the rise of flexible and remote work, again, accelerated by the global pandemic, is changing companies' needs for fixed office space. While still, I think the full implications of these shifts aren't yet fully known, we do know that there will be impacts both across regions and within them in both cities, and particularly downtowns and suburbs alike. Among other things, these shifts may not bode terribly well for isolated and antiquated and poorly designed office developments whose purpose is just becoming increasingly irrelevant. So all these disruptions that are being caused by the digital economy, the digital revolution, are occurring in tandem with powerful demographic trends that are having their own complementary impacts on place, with a diversifying population and changing household structures, leading to increased demand for new forms of housing and more walkable, vibrant communities in which to live and to work and to recreate. So these trends are having a lot of positive impacts, but they're also leaving way too many people and places behind. So taken together, these trends are again, really yielding some positive things. So after decades of continued sprawl and suburban dominance, a lot of US cities have been experiencing rebounding populations, growing employment, and new public and private sector investments in infrastructure, in real estate, and in placemaking. And all this is then leading to new or revitalized areas of economic activity throughout cities and regions, particularly in historic downtowns, along waterfronts, and more recently in innovation districts where research institutions and entrepreneurs are clustering and connecting with one another. These trends are also leading to the rapid rise of more mixed use and walkable suburban districts. Indeed, the demand for density has actually been increasing. Telework was growing even before the pandemic, yet nationwide, jobs in the information sector were still physically clustering at an accelerated rate as companies were seeking out the benefits of specialized talent and knowledge spillover. So all those predictions about how the internet was going to make offices and clustering and concentration and just being together obsolete never really materialized. Of course, we don't know how COVID is going to, again, completely impact these trends over the long term, but we may actually find that increased telework is an important part of flexibility that in turn makes a lot of this intense clustering feasible. So why do we even care about these patterns? Well, the trends are important to follow because for cities and for many other communities that have been suffering from years of job and population loss, increases in job density are producing some pretty welcome effects. Research by my team at the Bass Center found that metro areas that saw increases in job density, for example, actually saw faster economic and job growth, as well as greater improvements in overall prosperity. Evidence also shows that density and proximity can generate more innovation. In 2017, there was a Brookings report done by Scott Andes that found that universities located in downtown areas actually outpace non-urban universities on a whole range of innovation indicators, from licensing deals to the number of startups, which may in fact then help to explain why advanced industry firms and entrepreneurs are increasingly moving to be in the orbit of these institutions, again, giving rise to these kind of innovation clusters or innovation districts. Finally, Chris Lineberger, Tracy Haddon Lowe, and others have demonstrated that walkable places yield strong premiums in housing, retail, and office rents over those in more drivable suburban areas, which in turn can have a positive fiscal impact on regenerating places. And yet, for all these positive effects, we know that the knowledge economy is also leaving far too many people and far too many places behind. If we look across the country, the digital economy is rewarding large global centers that are attracting innovative companies and highly educated workers, while a lot of the older industrial cities, heartland, and other non-coastal communities, particularly small and mid-sized cities and rural towns, are struggling to keep pace. Brookings research found that since 2005, 5 metro areas, just 5, Boston, the San Francisco Bay Area, San Jose, Seattle, and San Diego, accounted for fully 90% of all US growth in innovation sector jobs. At the same time, while downtowns across the country are generally experiencing growth, big city downtowns on the coast are seeing far more growth than their smaller counterparts in the Midwest and the South, including downtowns in New Orleans and Baton Rouge, for example, that were part of this study, which have generally seen their downtown populations decrease, albeit at a much slower pace in recent decades than they had before. Importantly, many of these same trends are playing out within regions. Research by the Economic Innovation Group has shown that in the post-recession and then pre-COVID period, already prosperous areas within metros added firms and jobs, while other communities continue to face decline and disinvestment. The consequences of this disinvestment have been devastating, with disadvantage across a whole range of indicators, concentrating in low-income census tracts. Recent Bass Center research found that nationwide, census tracts with high concentrations of low-income residents had higher shares of residents working in service occupations, most of which are low wage and were very impacted by COVID-19. They have a larger percentages of households with no internet and a far lower share of homeowners than low-need tracts, which for purposes of this research meant any census tract that wasn't designated as high need by recent public sector or academic indices. Low-income neighborhoods also have a disproportionate concentration of Black and Latino residents, while tracts not designated as high need are overwhelmingly white. These spatial disparities were created and reinforced by decades of housing and land use policies and practices that valued, segregated, and just simply sometimes physically destroyed low-income and minority communities. And this in turn has left many people of color, even those with higher incomes, concentrated in areas that are not only home to many low-income families, but that often lack the businesses, the services, and the amenities enjoyed by higher income residents. And these are the same businesses and services and amenities that also help people access employment and to build wealth. In short, place matters. So all this brings me to the third reason that we established the Bass Center 3 years ago, and really what motivates all the work that we do. So as I've described, major market and demographic forces are altering the demands for place, yielding rewards for some people and for some communities. But in an era marked by stark inequalities, by income and wealth, by race, by ethnicity, by geography, local and regional leaders from big cities to very small towns are hungry to harness these forces in ways that produce more widespread economic benefits. And so this really provides both an urgency and a tremendous opportunity to reimagine our approach to place and to help communities invest in transformative solutions, what we call transformative placemaking, at a scale and with an ambition to meet the needs of businesses and people wherever they may live and work. But here's the thing. Our current systems are just simply too siloed to address the challenges I just talked about. It's not working for economic development to gloss over place and design and racial equity, just like it's not working for land use planning to propagate a racist status quo, continue to create inaccessible and auto-dependent communities, or simply assume a static economic landscape that we know just isn't the reality. The pandemic, disruptions to the economy, the climate crisis, and racism are all exacerbating place challenges in real time. And at this point, it's threatening the vitality and the resilience of entire regions, We simply can't spend our way out of inequality, waste, and sprawl. We need a new, integrated, and place-centered approach. So to combat these challenges and ensure that the trends I highlighted here actually benefit more people and places, the Bass Center is working to elevate the whole concept of transformative placemaking as this new form of integrated practice. One focused on creating communities that are economically dynamic, where the built environment is accessible and sustainable, and which are socially and culturally inclusive. This holistic vision for places also requires critical civic engagement and hyper-local governance structures where residents and workers and businesses and other stakeholders can work together to determine the economic, built environment, and social environment outcomes they want to see in their communities and organize around and advocate for policies and investments to achieve them. So I'm just going to highlight a few examples of what do we even mean by transformative placemaking practice. So first, as I said, transformative placemaking nurtures a connected and creative and dynamic economic ecosystem that's rooted in the assets of local places and local businesses. In New Orleans' 7th Ward, for example, one of the neighborhoods that was hardest hit by Hurricane Katrina, the New Orleans-based Crescent City Community Land Trust recognizes the need not only for affordable homeownership, but for affordable commercial spaces for small businesses. So the organization partnered with a Black-owned local business that has been a community anchor for over 100 years, which is Van Crescent Sausage Company, is the business, to restore and develop lighted brick and mortar buildings, incorporating permanently affordable housing into this mix. They also provided affordable leases to startup entrepreneurs to preserve and to nurture small businesses in this community. Moreover, the organization made intentional efforts to empower residents with the information and tools that they really needed to make decisions about their home and their community and promoting proactive community stewardship. Oh, go back one, sorry about that. Transformative placemaking also supports a built environment that's accessible and resilient. So for example, in Memphis, the River Parks Partnership focuses on increasing connectivity between neighborhoods and generating greater neighborhood investment through improvements to parks along the Mississippi, as well as investing in free programming that attracts a whole diversity of residents to this park area. The organization also embeds principles of equity into their actual operations, from staff development to contractor development, for example, such that they're not only transforming the physical space of the riverfront, but they're also reinvigorating the entire neighborhoods around them. Transformative placemaking also fosters a vibrant and cohesive social environment that's reflective of community identity. So for example, realizing that residents of their surrounding neighborhoods weren't using many of the public spaces that they designed or maintained. A few years ago, the University City District in Philadelphia launched their Just Spaces initiative to analyze why this was the case, and then to use that information to draw a plan for engaging a broader diversity of the local population. They designed a web-based tool to capture key metrics and are using that tool along with a lot of community input to inform programming and design and decisions in the public realm and to just simply improve the spaces that they design and maintain. And then finally, transformative placemaking encourages robust civic engagement structures. In Washington, D.C., the 11th Street Bridge Park project is an effort led by the place governance organization Building Bridges Across the River that's focused on creating a public park that will be perched over the Anacostia River. The organization had hundreds of community meetings over 2 years to design a project that met the aspirations of the neighborhoods it will connect and serve. Beyond their focus on the park itself, through this process, they also created an equitable development plan for the area that's focused on business and community engagement and equity at its core. So while I highlighted each of these examples, efforts around one of each of the 4 parts of the transformative placemaking framework, each one really exemplifies the integrated nature of their efforts. And that's really the whole point here around transformative placemaking. So for example, the efforts in New Orleans were targeted towards supporting a local business ecosystem in a majority Black neighborhood, but this is done in part by investing in the built environment assets to reinvigorate the area and build wealth. And all this was made possible through a strong civic infrastructure with the Crescent City Community Land Trust partnering with numerous community organizations in the area to set a vision, and then they're implementing strategies that are focused on the success of that vision. Similarly, the 11th Street Bridge project exemplifies how, by virtue of their civic organizing and advocacy, they were able to expand the scope and scale of their efforts over time. They began with a major physical project, the bridge across the river, aimed at creating new green and recreational space that also fostered, it is aimed at fostering a more cohesive social environment by virtue of physically connecting these two neighborhoods, one that's pretty booming and one that's been historically excluded. But by deeply engaging with community residents, organizers identified a whole range of other needs and opportunities around businesses, business assistance, and workforce development, leading ultimately to the creation of the equitable development plan that I mentioned earlier. In short, by focusing on outcomes for a community, for a place, the intersectionality of both the challenges and the solutions become far more apparent. Of course, none of this happens by accident. To deliver these kind of outcomes, public and private and civic sector leaders across the country need knowledge about where assets are clustered within regions, in urban, suburban, and rural areas alike, and the varied and unique role that these hubs play in their regional economies, particularly those areas whose assets have largely gone unrecognized and undervalued. This knowledge must in turn inform new land use and infrastructure and economic development policies and investment strategies that support these hubs instead of continuing to support auto dependent sprawl. And finally, this knowledge must support the implementation of new practices and tools within these hubs, like a lot of those that I noted, that are just more responsive to the shifting demands of how and where we live and we work and we shop, and that ultimately help create more equitable communities that work better for more people in the face of rapid change. And this is it. This is our theory of change. By working together to invest in transformative placemaking approaches, public and private and community leaders have an opportunity to build a better post-COVID future and ensure that our cities and our regions are more economically and fiscally prosperous, more sustainable and more resilient, and to provide greater equity and opportunity for all. So thanks so much for listening. And now I'm going to pass the baton off to Ilana.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. And I'm going to get my video on. Lovely to see everybody today. And I'm really excited to be here with this wonderful panel of people and really build on the conversation that Jennifer started. You know, I think about this all, I take everything that Jennifer said and I sort of just keep applying it farther and farther down and into downtown, into a neighborhood center, and really looking at what does it mean? So if we really want to create an equitable recovery from the pandemic and from what we've been through over the last many decades in many of our communities, what does that have to do with downtown? How do we take some of these lessons and really apply them? Because downtowns are, to me, about the heart of our community. They're where we express the personality of our place. They're where people and their small businesses express the personalities of who they are, but they're also where we see the neglect and the disinvestment and the historic exclusion, both of people and of places in different parts of our country. And that it's really important for us to think about this in a very open and straightforward way, because our downtowns and our main streets and our community squares are really the heart of our community. They're where people want to gather, where people want to be included in activities. And like Jennifer was talking about, we've had all of these different pieces that have impacted the vast majority of our cities and towns across the country, and not always in a positive way, and especially where we are in the pandemic and its impact on our small businesses, which is the perspective that I come at a lot of this from. We're seeing even more places struggle. So just a little bit about me, since I don't know everybody on here. My name is Ilana Pruss. I'm the founder and CEO of Recast City. On the left, you can see this amazing dress that my mother sewed for me when I was in high school. It really was electric blue, sort of like the background behind me. And she sewed, she knit, she quilted, she painted, she taught us all how to use drills. It was just what we all did, right? It was part of our lives. And on the right, you can see when I had the opportunity to give a TEDx talk all about the economic power of great places, which has always been my passion. My other passion are these crazy kids that I have that are now much bigger than I am, but teaching them not only to appreciate people and places, but learn how to use the tools and be self-sufficient in that kind of way. The work that I do with Recast City is really based on my background in city planning, my background in community development, but really my background in how do we get pieces to change at the local level? We work with communities, local government leaders, Main Street organizations, downtown authorities, and developers on how do we bring small scale manufacturing into our downtowns or onto our main streets as a way to bring energy and bring investment back to those places. And I will explain what I mean by small scale manufacturing, I promise, in just a minute. But to me, it's all about how are we creating places that are loved, that people can feel proud of, and that are really a shining example of what that community is capable of. But one of the things that we really have to address is how our economic development and our planning actions of the past have excluded some people in some places. And it's important to me that we have honest conversations about the impacts of some of our decision making and really land very quickly in what do we do about it now. And I think it's important for us to acknowledge in any one of these conversations about our communities is the loss of life over the last year and a half. And to take a moment and realize that this isn't just about, any number, but this is about real lives in our communities, and the impact not only on people's physical health, but their mental health, and the way that this is rippling across our country in ways that we honestly don't even understand yet. But that this is in fact a part of our new reality of creating places that do value people and value everybody. We also need to acknowledge what happened last year, where almost all of our small businesses closed, and that the impact was very different across different populations, that twice as many Black-owned and Latino-owned businesses had to close than white-owned businesses. Sometimes that was because of the direct service nature of the business or a whole host of different things, but that we not only had this major closing last year, but that it was also about who it impacted and how. We've also seen an enormous drop in employment. Yes, employment is coming back in certain places, but we had a major drop in low-wage jobs. I'd love to see the return come back in middle-wage jobs as opposed to regrowing so many low-wage jobs to help more people be able to break out of cycles of poverty and be able to afford things for their home and their household and their family. But that means that we have to very purposefully think about how are we supporting not only businesses that create middle-income jobs, but space for the businesses that create the middle-income jobs and all of the different parts of the infrastructure around that within our community. And then we have to take that step back and look at the demographics like Jennifer was talking about of everything that was going into communities or coming out of communities before the pandemic. 80% of all of our counties were already seeing a decline in working age population. That's brain drain, that's the aging of our communities, right? And that we were going into the pandemic already with the highest income inequality we've ever recorded in our country. The biggest difference between the have and the have-nots in our country, and a lot of that is because of all of those low-wage jobs. It's also because of historic decisions that our country made over the last 50, 60, and more years, where the racial wealth gap in our country is very real. The difference between the median white household and the median Black household and the median Latino household are very different. But we know that Black households were subject to very specific decision-making over the last 60, 70 years that removed the opportunity to buy homes, removed the opportunity to open a business, didn't give people the same opportunity in job security or wages. And that these impacts of the past and the lack of good paying jobs today combine to create this racial wealth gap. We also know that vacant properties have an enormous impact on a corridor, on a block, right? It's not only the decision of a person of what they do with that property. We have a lot of property owners right now in smaller cities and towns that are distant property owners that are leaving their storefront, their main street iconic building empty because of the tax loophole that they can benefit from it. But the impact that they're having across that whole block and potentially across that whole neighborhood is in fact devastating to the local economy. On top of that, we had major retail changes that Jennifer was starting to talk about, where major retailers have consolidated their footprint. They only want to be in a few prime locations, and we have record store closings. And we had major job losses in non-metro areas since the last recession in 2008. So I don't mean to pile it on, but I think it's really important to understand the reality of where we're starting from. And it's a really hard place. And the question to ask is really, what does all of this have to do with our downtowns and equitable economic recovery? And really thinking about what we do to come out of this. What do we do to become that we can recognize that we're in a transformational moment and that we can really do something about it. And that's where I focus my work, is really on how do we build a strong and inclusive economy and have a thriving downtown? Because to me, these pieces are all together. It is about the downtown that is going to be the thing that really changes a lot of pieces about opportunity and about the economy, and that we need to do this with intention and purpose. And I'm going to talk about what I mean about that a little bit, but that one piece of that is about addressing racial inequities and place inequities to create places that people love, that draw other people in, but that really helps the people in our community today build household wealth, create more opportunities for them and their family. The way that we do that is by investing in the people who live there now, right? The businesses that they have, they might be home-based, they might be in storefronts or in different kinds of areas, and we'll talk about that in a second. We need to invest in the place, so that's the downtown, the main street, with those people. Community-led, what do people want to see in those places, like Jennifer was talking about? And then we need to create a new structure to support and scale those investments and think long-term, but act now. There is such a need, I'm sure you all recognize this, there is such a need right now for support. I believe we have to figure out what actions can we take in the next 6 months to make real visible changes for people while we're thinking long-term, while we're thinking about the bigger, harder projects down the line. This is where small-scale manufacturing comes into the work. Small-scale manufacturing are businesses that create a tangible product that you can replicate or package. I have a shorthand for it that I use that I say it's hot sauce, handbags, or hardware, right? This is artisans to advanced manufacturing and everything in between. I'm gonna give you a few examples. This is Seo Ceramics, S-I-O Ceramics, if you wanna look them up online. They create jewelry and small household products. It's a ceramics company. They make small batches. You can see small batches of products. And I met them at a street festival. I have a tendency to go up to people at street festivals and ask them all kinds of questions. So when I met Seo Ceramics, they told me about how they were a vendor at this street festival. They have a micro retail storefront. A micro retail storefront is in a development that created storefronts that are between 400 and 800 square feet in this project, and created them with shared bathrooms behind them and different kinds of shared facilities so that there could be a really small footprint that was affordable for these businesses. And through community negotiation for the new development, committed to 30 years of subsidized below market commercial rate for these spaces. So a business can move into here, have an affordable space, do their production and retail in the same space because it was created as artisan space, and sell out of this space, right? So this business is selling at the market, at the street festival, is selling out of their storefront, has a website, is selling direct to consumers online, and sells wholesale to other stores across the country. So all of a sudden we're looking at this business that has 4 different types of revenue coming in, which makes them incredibly nimble and very disaster proof depending on what's going on in the world. Another example, this is a business in a small town in Alabama, Heflin, Alabama. The business is called Woodhaven Custom Calls. They make turkey calls. They have a production space 2 blocks off of Main Street. They employ a few dozen people. During the pandemic, when so much was closed, there were tons of people out and traveling for outdoor recreation. They had people starting to stop in their workshop that does not have a retail frontage to say, hey, we want to see where our products are. The thing that we love and buy, we want to see where it's made. And so all of a sudden, when I met this business, they were talking about how do we create a small retail frontage, maybe with a big glass window so people can show up. We can be a draw for our small town and they can safely see the production, because being able to see the production is an attraction. It's an amenity. It's a draw for the community and for people coming into the community. And they sell online and wholesale, but all of a sudden they could add this other element. This is also small scale manufacturing. And then we have different kinds of shared spaces that I just want to mention briefly that you might be familiar with. Commercial shared kitchens are popping up all over the country. These are places where businesses who are food businesses can come in and pay for a certain number of hours or a certain space, where somebody else is building the commercial kitchen, getting the health stamp of approval and making sure that that's working. And it reduces the barrier of entry from somebody who has a home-based food product business, but maybe wants to go into more formal marketplaces. Now they can be producing in a commercial kitchen, but only be paying for a small amount of that use and then be able to scale. And it is an amazing opportunity to be able to scale food product businesses in communities. And then we have buildings that were older industrial, but might be in the middle of a neighborhood or might be middle of town that can be reused for multiple small production tenants. This is an example in Philadelphia called Macon Studios, where the building was industrial now many, many years ago, but has been rehabbed so that it can be used for small production tenants, but who need 2,000 square feet or 5,000 square feet. No, most of people, nobody, this is a 120,000 square foot building, and most of these small scale manufacturers need smaller spaces at this point. So why am I talking to you about this business sector? It's because of what they can do for our community. They're in every community, big, small, everything that you can imagine. People are making stuff. It's a part of our heritage. It's part of our history. People are proud to be able to share their knowledge. And it gives us an opportunity to both build an inclusive community of business owners and create opportunity for more people and bring wealth into the community, because they're not just dependent like traditional retail on who's walking by their storefront. They're selling online. So they're quite literally bringing dollars into the community. And then they can fill storefronts, especially when you can do production and retail in the same space. These are wonderful businesses to fill storefronts because they aren't dependent on the foot traffic because they're selling online, but they can draw foot traffic to a place that needs it because it is super cool to look in the window or come into a store and see something being made. This is one example also of how it helps break these cycles of loss. Zeke's Coffee is a coffee shop, but they have major coffee roasting in the back of the building. The front is the coffee shop that anybody can wander in. The back does distribution, wholesale for the whole region. And what this means is that when they moved into a block that had a lot of vacancies, they weren't dependent on that foot traffic to succeed, but by drawing foot traffic to this block, they helped to attract enough people that a number of other properties have since been filled along this area. And that by taking care of these businesses in our community very visibly, we can attract other business owners who want to be a part of what we're building. Attract entrepreneurs from within the community, attract people who want to come to the community and launch businesses and grow them there. So to me, this is all part of a thriving economy. And when we worked with some places, this is in Columbia, Missouri, the thing that people were most amazed by always was that this was a hidden part of the economy. These businesses were just sort of chugging along and nobody was paying attention to them. And by tapping into them and pulling them out of the woodwork, we could easily help create this economic engine. In Columbia, Missouri, one of the things that we found from working with them is that there was a demand for a commercial shared kitchen. So they got that off the ground. And the other thing we realized was that there was a barrier to these businesses moving into a lot of other spaces along the corridor because zoning didn't support it. So they passed a zoning amendment to allow artisan industry in that area. And that was a big part of that work. And all of it is an amazing opportunity right now because we have access to funding from the American Rescue Plan, with this recognition that downtowns are really important and that small businesses are really essential. So I just want to very briefly give you 5 key steps you can take tomorrow or start thinking about. One is these businesses need affordable space for a diversity of business owners and business sizes. That might be micro retail space, that might be rehabbing storefronts on Main Street, but we need to create spaces for them that allow production as well. Second, we need to fill gaps in business assistance with local initiatives. That might be assistance in different languages. That's definitely partnering with different organizations in the community to get the word out who are known and trusted in different parts of your population. And that also means that the best bet is usually focusing on businesses, even part-time businesses that are already in your community first before working on new startups. Third is really looking at how do we target investment models, the capital that these businesses need, maybe micro grants, low cost loans, who can serve that role? And then thinking about your policies. Yes, it might be zoning, it might be occupancy permits. There's all sorts of barriers that these businesses find, and they don't have the funding to be able to hire some kind of consultant to take them through the process. They need to just know exactly, without any loopholes or sort of black box questions. And then the last thing is to really think about how programming can bring people together. When we have events like this, the vendors in our community are the business owners from our community. People are so proud to come out and be a part of this and help grow these businesses. These small scale manufacturers on average are creating jobs that pay 50 to 100% more than retailer service jobs. So when we're talking about breaking out of these cycles of racial inequity and lack of good middle income jobs, this is one key way we get there. And by using them as a way to bring us together, to fill our storefronts in downtown, it can have an amazing impact. So I hope you all think about how to take action from this, and really think about how to bring people together, and really think about what it means to have support for jobs and for business owners that are proud of what they're creating within the community, and the leadership that it takes to do that, because it's definitely worth it. Thank you. And now I am going to hand it off to Miss Wendy Jackson.
Thank you, Ilana. I really appreciate it. While I'm sharing my screen, let me first just say good morning, or actually, yes, it's still morning here in Michigan. And thank you for having me. It's truly a pleasure to join you from my home studio here in Detroit, where I've been, like so many others, for the last several months. And I want to, start off by, I think what Jennifer and Ilana have done is give you some important themes and strategies to consider. Many of those we are using in the city of Detroit, and I want to talk with you about how those have gone to ground for us. So again, I'm Wendy Jackson. I lead our Detroit program at the Kresge Foundation. And again, it's such a pleasure to join you this morning. Detroit truly is a city that is betting big on the power of place. And more specifically, we're making investments, both large and small, in the public realm. So it's my pleasure to talk with you about our experience and share specific examples for you that hopefully will be useful in your communities. But first, let me give you a little bit of information about the Kresge Foundation. And Kresge is a national foundation. We fund all across the country, and we also have a program in South Africa as well. And we do that with the mission primarily to expand opportunity in America's cities. The Foundation's Detroit program, however, is our largest and signature place-based program at the Foundation. It represents about 20% of our overall grant making, and that grant making, that 20%, is devoted to our hometown, Detroit. And in Detroit, we collaborate with different partners across a number of different sectors to promote and expand long-term equitable opportunity by centering the priorities of residents. Our program works with a range of partners, including resident leaders, nonprofit organizations, businesses, state and city governments. And in Detroit, we believe centering people, racial equity, and place are crucial to the broad and equitable development needed across neighborhoods. So to that end, we invest in leadership and community development that supports and improves quality of life for all Detroiters. And in this kind of constellation or matrix of relationships, we place our highest priority on neighborhood-based organizations that reflect community. We believe that these are the organizations that are probably the best able to ensure that the history of structural racism and bias do not shape our city's future. So this leads us to be a grant-making program that is quite values-based. We approach our work with a posture of listening to people and community, being humble and respectful, as well as inclusive. We make sure to try as much as we can to challenge power narratives in our grant making and really act with intention. So given all that, why place? And for us, place matters. It's not an abstract concept. We believe that we all share and benefit from the parks, streetscapes, community centers, trails, and libraries that comprise our cities. So place is essential for building the strong local communities that cultivate civic engagement and public leadership. And you've heard a lot about the evidence. It's strong evidence that strategic and deliberate investments in our places can just unlock tremendous benefits for our community. Those benefits include building trust and connecting people of different backgrounds, generating wealth and economic development, as you just heard from Ilana, promoting health and safety, and fostering greater environmental sustainability, as well as driving equity. So Detroit is an iconic American city with a very rich history, and recognizing existing assets has been central to the Kresge Foundation investment in our strategy in Detroit. And we've been doing this kind of city revitalization that is deeply centered on placemaking for over a decade. And we've done that through a series of public and private partnerships that we believe has demonstrated what's possible when a city centers placemaking as core to its overall revitalization. And we're doing this from the downtown to our neighborhoods and really trying to build a web of iconic placemaking efforts across the city, not just concentrated in one part of the city. And we especially place an emphasis on creative placemaking, which is placemaking that strengthens arts, culture, and design at the core of the various projects. But our approach is more than building beautiful spaces. It's really about fostering greater equity in our community so that we're investing in places that have historically experienced very chronic disinvestment. And we do that through a set of key principles. Our work is very much grounded in the principles of racial equity and placing a priority on people, place, and power. And so our grant making in this space is truly focused on dismantling racialized systems of disinvestment, improving opportunities for amplifying the voices of leaders, particularly leaders of color in our community, and serving underrepresented populations, and doing so by building collective power, fostering greater leadership development, particularly at the neighborhood scale, and addressing the root causes of systemic racial injustice. We have been thinking about this in the context of when you change the place, you change the trajectory of opportunity in your community. So the projects that we invest in, and I would say that we invest in these not only in Detroit, but in other communities as well, are just nested in some key principles. First is that you have to have a compelling community-generated vision, and that vision has to tie to the experiences and aspirations of the local community. So, shorthand, local first, local vision is primary and a priority in how we think about where and how to invest. We also integrate the arts and believe it's an important principle as a way of creating social and economic vitality and reinforcing community identity. We try as much as possible to leverage the creative potential that's already present in a place, and believe that there are experts right in our own neighborhoods that if you just tap into that potential, it can unleash a number of different benefits and creative benefits in particular. We try and protect and enhance the city's natural form as the heart of its visual heritage. And you'll see that in just a minute in some of the examples I lift up for you. And increasingly, we ask the climate question and believe it's important to really embed this in your construct of placemaking. And that climate question is, how will this project, this placemaking effort, stabilize or further destabilize our climate? And with that question, begin to think about, how do you elevate the primacy of sustainability and climate resilience? And resilience, I think, even more broadly, in terms of how will you make how the decisions that you'll make, how will those decisions affect the city's long-term ability to absorb and adjust to the changing economic, social, demographic, political, and climate considerations and conditions. And then we also believe it's extremely important to acknowledge the interdependence and incorporate major infrastructure projects into the existing physical, social, and economic fabric of a place. And then lastly, making sure that these projects truly benefit everyone, and that the benefits go to the full economic, demographic, and political spectrum. So let's look at a couple of examples from Detroit that can be scaled or modified really to any community. The first one that I thought would be important to talk about is, especially after Ilana's presentation on downtown, is really the first major placemaking project that we engaged in the city of Detroit. It's called Campus Marshes Park. It's really where the heart and spine of the city and the region come together. So we're called Motor City for a reason. Detroit literally is kind of shaped like a wheel. You might see that in a few minutes in one of the maps I bring up. But all the major spines or avenues in the city converge right in the heart of downtown in this park. And so it's a 2.5 acre public space that was really the first kind of public-private partnership around a major placemaking effort in the city. And today it is where the city and the region comes together. In the winter, it's open for ice skating. There's now a roller rink down there. In the summer, it's turned into a beach. There's concerts, movies, and restaurants that help to spark, I think, a greater focus and emphasis on downtown revitalization overall, with many of the examples that Ilana lifted up in terms of small businesses and micro businesses in the downtown core. Campus Marshes led us to take on an even more ambitious placemaking effort, which is Eastern Market. And Eastern Market is really considered the focal point for not only our region's fresh food movement, but it is considered a national model as well. This is where philanthropic investments, as well as public sector investments, we partnered to really transform a 100-plus-year-old market and a complex of sheds into what is now considered the largest public market in the country. And it has more than 1,000. It's also created a citywide network that has led to 1,000 or so community gardens, a cohort of restaurants in and around the Eastern Market complex, but also a hub and spoke model for neighborhood farmers markets, obviously much smaller, but that are connected to the larger Eastern Market. complex. So it's kind of created this whole food oriented development ecosystem across the city, which also has economic development benefits for the downtown core and our neighborhoods. Eastern Market led us to one of what's considered one of the largest placemaking projects in the city of Detroit, and that was the revitalization of our riverfront. I probably should have provided you with a before picture, but our riverfront was a neglected industrial space for many years because it was a working riverfront, and it was contaminated with big and small industry. About 15 years ago now, philanthropy and the public sector came together to reclaim the riverfront. And as a result, it reoriented our gateway to the city. It really is the necklace that goes across the city of Detroit, from one bridge, the Ambassador Bridge, which is the bridge that allows you to go to Canada, because it does, we do have an international border right across the river, to another bridge, the Belle Isle Bridge, which is a beautiful park within the city of Detroit. And so the riverfront is spanning those two bridges. We were able to recapture and revitalize and redevelop that riverfront, and now it attracts millions of visitors a year, with a number of different kind of public space projects that line that several mile stretch, from gardens to, as you see here, a state park that's now located in the city of Detroit with its own lighthouse, to a carousel and other different kinds of amenities along the stretch. So those are some of our largest placemaking projects in the city, but I thought it would also be important to show you some of the smaller examples that are particularly more focused on neighborhoods. And the one I want to lift up for you is the Kresge Innovative Projects Detroit initiative. This is an initiative that we started at the Kresge Foundation, specifically designed for neighborhood scale projects. We provide about $3.5 million a year for these projects. And they can be planning grants as well as implementation grants. I believe I saw a question in the chat even about, how do you ensure that, parks and schools are able to participate in placemaking efforts. This is a great example where we've been able to realize that in the city of Detroit. And what we've tried to do with this particular initiative, it's more than just about the project. It really is about how do you create that chemistry, that alchemy, and that social cohesion within our neighborhoods to get stuff done. And these projects are not large. A lot of them involve transforming a vacant lot, creating a small greenhouse on a vacant lot in a neighborhood, projects where schools work with their students and families and surrounding neighbors on playscapes and beautification projects. And so what we've been able to experience with Kresge Innovative Projects Detroit is over 100 different placemaking projects, neighborhood scale placemaking projects across the city of Detroit. It's really lit up the map in our city for placemaking. And it's now an initiative that we're replicating in other communities, specifically Memphis, most recently as right before the pandemic. So today, as a matter of fact, we just launched our 7th round of we call it KIP D here in Detroit. So our 7th round of Kresge Innovative Projects. And this round, I don't know if you can see my pointer, but Detroit is unique because we have literally 2 cities within its borders, Highland Park and Hamtramck. There are these gray spaces here. And so with today's initiative, we will be including those two cities in the overall KIPD initiative. And so hopefully next time I am able to come back and talk with you, you'll see projects in those areas as well. And then the last example I wanted to provide for you is one that is actually more of how we engage in national philanthropic initiatives. And this one is Reimagining the Civic Commons. This is an initiative where 5 foundations have come together to launch placemaking efforts. Right now, they're in 5 communities, Detroit being one of them, Akron, Ohio, Philadelphia, and a few others. But this is an interesting example for us because, again, it's about neighborhood scale projects. These are a little bit larger in dollar amounts, but it's also about how do you think about placemaking in a cohesive, with a cohesive and equitable approach that involves more trust building and a diverse set of anchors in a particular community. So for us in Detroit, we used the Reimagining the Civic Commons initiative to think about how do you work with 2 anchors, in this case, 2 college and universities that are located within a neighborhood in Detroit to build social cohesion and incorporate strong principles of design and equity. And so this is an example of the work that we've been doing in Ella Fitzgerald Park through the Reimagining the Civic Commons initiative. And it has involved building this park through a very extensive community engagement process that even included the naming of the park as well as the various elements that are included in the park. There's through community engaged design, a greenway that provides a link between the 2 university anchors in this neighborhood. There's also elements of green space and building out a series of meadows around vacant spaces. Again, all of this generated by community involving aspects of elevating community trust and community engagement and leadership. So I thought that was also an important example to lift up for you. And this kind of work is getting replicated in communities across the country, thanks to the Reimagining the Civic Commons initiative. So in closing, I wanted to just lift up that, we believe through our work at the Kresge Foundation, I think our work, particularly in Detroit, in our hometown, is a really good example of how you can think about resident-centered and resident-powered leadership as a way to transform your places, your spaces, and your community. We believe that lived experience is expertise. And when you bring community residents together in a way that allows them to envision what an important placemaking, transformative placemaking project could be for their community, you'll yield a number of different benefits. Placemaking really is about bringing everybody together. And one of the things that we're looking at in Detroit, which I hope will be a part of the conversation today, is the fact that we think we have a historic opportunity to really put greater energy and emphasis into placemaking, thanks to the infrastructure bill and some of the other federal supports that are now becoming available to communities. And so for us in Detroit, we'll be combining our philanthropic investments with the with even greater opportunities for public investments to continue doing this kind of work, both for large placemaking projects, but also, again, with greater emphasis on those projects at the neighborhood scale. So thank you very much for your time and attention. And now let me turn it back, I believe, to our moderator, Preston, who is going to introduce the next segment.
Hey, Wendy, and thank you, Jennifer Vey, and thank you, Ilana Pruss. Fantastic presentations. Now, I would like to ask Mayor Jennifer Vedrine to give us an update on placemaking in Ville Platte, Louisiana.
Hi, thank you so much, and hello to everyone. My name is Jennifer Vedrine. I am serving my third term as mayor of my beloved Ville Platte, the place where we have the friendliest people in the world and the best food in the world, even better than New Orleans. We're a small city, but we have the most precious, genuine people that you would ever meet. And it's a small city, but it's full of love, and it's full of people who really genuinely care about each other. People still wave to each other when you pass in front of their homes, whether they know you or not. People sit on the porch, and it's just a friendly atmosphere, and it's home for me. I was born and raised there, and so I love the people, and we are working to enhance the environment there. Our Ville Platte, and we call it our Ville Platte because it belongs to us. And sometimes a lot of the small cities, we get caught up or we get forgotten and we fall through the cracks, but we're still alive and we still matter, and we're still trying to rejuvenate small cities. I mean, and you don't have all of the makings of a big city. You know, to us, a traffic jam is when you have to stop at the traffic light. That's about it. But other than that, you can get where you have to go. But recently, the recent climate of racial inequalities and race relations in the last few years charged my heartstrings to try to find a place, or try to find an event, or try to find a venue where we could create a place where people of both races can have the hard conversations. And that's what we're trying to do now. We are part of the E Pluribus Unum Foundation, and that's a foundation that was started by former mayor of New Orleans, Mitch Landrieu, who is now the present coordinator of the infrastructure bill. So congrats to him. But this foundation was started to combat and have language and have conversations about the racial inequalities and the racial injustices that go on. And so through this project, we are building pocket parks in neighborhoods. We already have the big parks, but we wanted to create pocket parks in neighborhoods, in a Black neighborhood, in a white neighborhood, and in a neighborhood where people can come together, one on this side of the tracks, one on that side of the tracks, where people can come together and have the hard conversations. I know we all get together at sporting events, football games, basketball games, and so forth, but we very seldom sit down and talk about the hard conversations of race. Conversations such as, what is it like in the life of a Black man, a Black woman, a Black child every day? What is it in the life of a white man and a white child and a white woman every day? And I think once we sit down and have these conversations, well, like in Ville Platte, we'd sit down around a sauce piquant or some kind of meal or so, but have the conversations and find out what each one of us go through on a daily basis. And I think once we do that, we will find out that we are more alike than we are different, and we are better together. So hopefully these pocket parks, we're going to start with 5 of them in neighborhoods that were historically Black, but now we have white people moving into those. We're going to put pocket parks in neighborhoods that were historically white. And now we have people that are Black people that are moving into those neighborhoods so they can come together in their own neighborhood, in their own space. They can relax, they can be comfortable, and they could start having the hard racial conversations of what is dividing us, why we are being so divided, why we have such animosity to each other or for each other now. And I think these pocket parks will do that. They can bring their children, they will be able to exercise, and it's also going to be educational. We're going to have health programs there, physical fitness programs there, because as we all know, everyone does not have total access to healthcare, education, social events. So hopefully these pocket parks, we're going to have programs there, weekly, monthly, quarterly, where we can expose everyone. And it could be equitable, where everyone will have an opportunity to get health information, educational information, social information, and so forth. And local authors will come there and read their books, and the children can come and they can see you do have local authors in your neighborhood, people who have actually written books, so you can write a book. So it'll be inspirational as well. But I think the nucleus of the pocket parks will be people coming together and having conversations that they otherwise would not have. And we're also going to build a gazebo downtown right near the tracks, so people on this side of the tracks and on that side of the tracks can come together in a gazebo every day. If they want to, they can have lunch there, but more importantly, they can talk there. And every quarter, we are going to have an economic boost, because we're going to invite all local businesses. We're going to shut down the streets and invite local businesses to come. And so both races can see where Black businesses are, and Black people can see where white businesses are. So we can probably just close that divide where people will shop at, Black people will shop at white businesses, white business people will shop at Black businesses, and everybody can come together in a relaxed environment with not all the animosity of race and the race relations and the negativity that we have been experiencing in the last few years in America, in small cities. And it's hard really especially for small city mayors, because we have to do everything. We have to open City Hall, we have to make the gumbo, we have to get everybody going. So it's important that our people can come together, have the hard conversations, and that I've stated before, and find out that the more we talk, the more we'll find out that we are more alike than different, and that we are definitely better together. So if anybody wants to know and have a good time and have a bon ton and meet the friendliest people in the world and the best food in the world, come on down to Ville Platte, Louisiana.
Tamina, I just love your energy. You are infectious. I'm sure we all now know why you have served so long as the mayor of Ville Platte. With that said, Mayor Vedrine, I'd like to now turn to my homeboy, Mayor Alcindor, to talk about my hometown, Opelousas, and recent placemaking efforts there. Mayor Alcindor.
Good morning to you, Brother Preston, and good morning to all. I'm sure I could beg to differ with my my colleague about 20 miles north of me in Ville Platte about the food, because you're speaking to the mayor who is the mayor of the city, and we are considered the spiciest capital of the world with the different spices and what we bring here, because it's relative to our makeup of those who live here. And when Opelousas was started some 300 years ago. Last year we celebrated our tricentennial. But I say this because if you look at Opelousas and what we're trying to do here, and as Mr. Preston said, we're both from here. I've been here 61 years, and I remember downtown in the images that I'm sure Preston can reflect back and also see. And we saw a we saw Opelousas, if I may say this, go to sleep a little bit. Still had part of the eye open, looking at what possibly could come. But now we're at that stage now. And if it's not now, when will it occur? If it's not myself or those who are part of this growth that we have started here in Opelousas, as Wendy said and Ilana, both of them alluded to in their slides, the community itself, we have to take the experiences and the voices of those who are going to be here long after I'm removed from the seat that I'm presently sitting in. Now, I would love to stay here long and be part of this particular group. But if it's not me, I want to make sure that I leave a base, a foundation for that pyramid to be erected and make it upward. I talked about the seasoning, and you know, you look at the Tony Sashers, you look at the Targill, you look at Luana's cooking oil, what is it, Savoy sausage, that spice, that people, that resiliency that we all have here are part of this placemaking that the two presenters presented before the mayor and I got on there. You need those voices to be part of that particular growth. If we don't listen to them, are we truly serving them in the capacity that they put us in these positions, right? Look, Opelousas is the center of St. Lanyard Parish. I talked about this a minute ago. I remember some 35, matter of fact, even 40 years ago, 45 years ago, when Opelousas was a bustling downtown. When you pass by, you pull over because you had people walking the sidewalks, coming in and out of the buildings and the businesses that are there. It's been a minute since we've seen that, but now we have a group of people. Our Opelousas Downtown Development District, under the leadership of Ms. Lena Charles and her board, have really come together to take what was planned years ago but never acted on. And now we're sitting and we're communicating. Well, for us, where we are from the placemaking to improve our sidewalks and our downtown facilities, we took a diligent forefront step movement in speaking to the owners of these facilities, these buildings downstairs, down below me and across from me. What can you do to help us? We want to reinvigorate. We want to enhance Opelousas to where we may not be able to bring back what we saw 40, 45 years ago, because a good percentage of the members that sit of the downtown district were here and can envision the same thing that I'm talking about now. So here we are. We got new businesses coming in. We've asked them to, you know, there was I think a picture in Ilana's and in Sister Wendy's slideshows of a building with boarded doors and boarded windows. We need those things to be removed. Even if you just the decorum, dress it up to give it in a type of appearance where people can come downtown. But then if the more you see coming downtown, then you might be want to invest more, put more into this. Just not let it stay there and become an old, dilapidated, blighted building that's an eyesore to us. Listen, we know we got some good things coming there. There was one business started about a year and a half ago, and he started on the second floor of a coffee shop that came in early 19. Well, today, in the last 4 months, he has taken his business, their business, because he has partners in it, and moved it up the road about 4 or 5 buildings that they went in and did some remodeling. Now this place here is bustling. It's moving forward. We have new African-American ownership. Downtown Opelousas, as many of the speakers before me stated, that we need a mixture of all of us. That dialogue that Mayor Vedrine was speaking about. We're going to know more about each other and what our wants and our needs are, and what we would like to see is about having that type of dialogue. We have Black young entrepreneurs that are opening up businesses in buildings that at one time they wouldn't have been considered of even purchasing or even being renters of those facilities. So we're trying to do something differently, but having the mindset that tomorrow can be better, as Mayor Vedrine said, together. if we take those positive steps moving forward. We have failed, all of us, in some shape, fashion, or form or manner. We have failed. But don't let that failure become so stagnated where you don't move forward. And that's what we're trying to do here now. We've had community meetings, but 4 in the past 2 years. It's been a long battle for all of us. And Ilana spoke about it also with the pandemic that we've all had to confront in some shape or manner. But did you allow that? And I can see where Miss Wendy and all the other presenters before me didn't allow that to stop the movement, the caring and investing in their hometowns and elsewhere to start these type of projects. If you're not willing to invest in your own future, like we're doing here in Opelousas with the downtown district, the St. Landry Economic District, but the people of Opelousas play such a vital role. We're changing the sidewalks to make it more handicap accessible there. I spoke about the business that was on top of a coffee shop, but now has its own facility now. We also have a downtown market. About 7 months ago, came to the city and the downtown district and the Main Street, said, I would like to open up, start a downtown marketplace. He started on the side of the coffee shop. Now it is moved to the courthouse square. We have more people every 4th Saturday that are coming out and enjoying the handcrafted jewelry, the handcrafted artwork. The matter of fact, the fleur de lis that you see behind hanging on my wall, I made a purchase over there to a gentleman who's had some exquisite work, and I was very impressed with it. So we have talents, we have jewels here in not only in the city of Opelousas, but in surrounding area. But listening to them, let them be part of this growth and allowing the outsiders who come through Opelousas and see this taking place at the courthouse square. I don't want them to turtleneck. I want them to get out and stop and spend their tax dollars here in the city of Opelousas. I'm sure all of us as mayors want people's tax dollars when they're coming through here. But when that occurs, it also, they'll take that experience, take it back with them wherever their home is, say, listen, next time you're going through Opelousas, stop here, man. Opelousas is up on the way, we're moving forward. We're trying to do something different. The buy-in, we have to have buy-in from those who are part of our community, as Ms. Jackson spoke about earlier. Let them see what you're doing. Their voices can be part of that growth. If you disenfranchise them from being part of that, will your community become what the community is? Look, that buy-in is so vitally important. So as we continue to revitalize downtown Opelousas and bring these small businesses in and let them be part of this growth, we're hoping that it resonates outwardly. We're landlocked in the inner part of the city, but we do have growth that's happening on our boundaries, not beyond the city limits. So just imagine if this growth that we know is possible, easier said, not always easily done, but we have to spread toward them as they continue to spread toward us. And then all parts of Opelousas, our parks, that we're about to do a big redevelopment at our South City Parkway, becomes a tourism attraction, because the closest one to that is on the other side of Lafayette and Alexandria, and in between we have nothing. So why can't we be a miniature version of that type of tourist attraction, which brings into the dollars, but also hearing the voices of those that we represent to let them be part of what we're trying to do in the city of Opelousas. I believe that Opelousas is on the way up. I have to be optimistic about that. I truly am. Mayor Vedrine knows that each day that we come into this office, we're giving our heart. I don't do anything special for myself, but I try to do everything for the city of Opelousas. So I'm going to listen to those who brings ideas to this office. All of them won't be done, but I know in every presenter here and all those who are listening that an idea that I may have can only be enhanced and better by listening to someone else's idea. By bringing both of them together, we got a better idea that can impact our community and the future of the communities that we serve each and every day. So I'm excited, and so excited I have to highlight this here. Our master plan for our downtown area was recognized by the state. We were awarded, the Downtown Development District and the City of Opelousas was awarded, and thanks to our colleagues who are on here at CPEX, they played a very vital role in that. We got an award for this. We're recognized as the top downtown development district master plan that was put forth. So if the state and those on that committee are looking at this and saying, listen, this is an exceptional and great plan for the city of Opelousas, and we have the buy-in of those who have these buildings that has just been sitting there, they're trying to do something with them. That means that revitalization, that enhancement, that reinvigoration that we all want, they're going to be part of that. But we're pushing them. We're going to stay on them and ask them to be part of this. So once you have that group of people in their business, those circles that they work in and live in each and every day, they're going to come and be part of this growth. And that downtown area that Brother Preston and I remember back from 40 years ago, maybe 30 years for Brother Preston Castillo, is going to become that reality again. But it's going to take a collective effort from all of those who play part in that. And that means those that's part of each of our communities. We have to let them be part of that, bring their experiences in, bring their voices in, and let that growth continue to move forward. Thank you, Brother Castillo.
Wonderful remarks. At this time, I'd like for all of our panelists and Mayor Vedrine to join us by turning on their cameras and microphones. At this point, we're going to engage, and we've got quite a few questions in the Q&A that we'd like to get before our panelists. But this is about practical advice as well. We've got two of our mayors on because they have to live and breathe this. And so it's we have what I will call our resident scholars that are on, and not only our two mayors who are on with us, but we have mayors from all across the state of Louisiana, and I suspect across the country listening in, and they want real tips on what can be done to help advance their particular places, their particular cities, towns, communities. So we'd like to start by having actually Mayor Elsendorf ask a question of the panelists as it relates to specific advice, action steps that may help you in our hometown in Opelousas. Mayor Elsendorf.
Thank you again. Mr. Castillo. And I heard Wendy say some of this, and I'm sure everybody else can chime in on this. But we're too big to be small and too small to be too big. But in many of our situations, the mayors that's on the phone and those beyond that, many times we have many limited capabilities of implementation. And it makes it difficult to take a plan and move it forward. What suggestions that I heard some, but what other suggestions do our colleagues across the nation and Louisiana do you have as we begin to execute the plan that we have in place for us to kind of expedite that process? And I'm sure, and listening to Wendy in the many slides that you have, that, you know, for the foundation that you are involved in, it wasn't easy. And there were many, many challenges for all of you, for Jennifer and Ilana, the things that you talked about, and Mayor Vedrine. What kind of advice or suggestions can you give to me that I can relay or have dialogue with our Opelousas Downtown Development District, but also the people that we serve each and every day?
Wendy, you want to take that one to start off?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. You know, I think from our experience, I would lift up one or two things. And I saw this also in, I think, the Q&A about trust. And we learned very early on that these projects can only be done at the speed of trust. And so that really required us to break down projects. So just by way of context, it's a lot easier for us, particularly as a foundation, to do the big projects, the ones I kind of started out with in the presentation. It took change in our thinking, quite honestly, in order to think about projects at the neighborhood scale and break them down in a way where you don't have to do them all at once. And hopefully this is getting at what you're asking. It's, how do you take that plan and then, kind of stretch it out and reprioritize in ways that you start with projects that kind of stair step and help people build that level of trust and or social cohesion, and just learning how to work together first and foremost before trying to tackle kind of the next level of project. And then before you know it, at least in our experience, you do find that you're able to then progress a lot faster. But to start, it is really kind of looking at what is that kind of plant the flag effort. And it could be a pocket park, as Mayor Vedrine talked about, or, a neighborhood cleanup. It could be something as small as that to at least get people working together on an issue.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mayor Vedrine, you have a quick question, perhaps, as a follow-up to one of our panelists?
Yes,
I've got lots of questions in Q&A, but I'll let you go ahead and ask one as well.
Okay, I'll talk fast. Mine is two-part, mainly for Ms. Pruss. Small cities, we have challenges. And in your book, I read where you talk about we need a new economic development model because the old one no longer works. So could you talk about that a little bit? And also, we face a lot of financial challenges in getting our placemaking ideas going. And, as Miss Wendy said, and also Jennifer talked about as well, we have the great ideas, but we are strapped financially. I mean, now, thank God, we are blessed with infrastructure money, but God, we don't know when that will come. So where do we start on the ground? Where do we start at the roots of where we are now in getting financial help and also developing this new economic development model?
Mayor, it's a great question, because the challenge with what we had before was mostly economic development saying you have to chase some big business. That's the only thing that's going to save you in your economy. Right. We're going to throw money at that, even though the research shows that those businesses, 70% of the time, they're going to go to the place that they want to go anyway. And the vast majority of those jobs, they're actually bringing people with them. So it's not going to benefit the community so much. And on top of that, most places don't win that competition, right? So what do we do for everybody else is sort of where I sit in this. And I completely appreciate your perspective on that. And, that's why we talk about always starting with who do we have there? We start with the believers, right? And both of you are obviously mayors, the believers in your community, but the people you found to work with are also the believers. And so the believers we go after are the small business owners, the people who are making a product maybe at home and don't know how to scale. Maybe they've never sold anything online. Maybe the best thing that we can do for our community is help those individuals grow their revenue while staying at home, and they're not ready for a storefront yet. But at the same time, we'll have conversations with property owners in the downtown to say, what do you need? Why can't you fill the space, or why are you not filling the space? And I think this really connects to what a lot of different people said. It is about building trust, right? It's about rebuilding these relationships. I always talk about sitting down over a cup of coffee with one person and really finding out. I always go back to the same three questions, sort of what's their vision of what's possible here? Mm-hmm. What assets do we already have that make that possible? And what are we missing? And then my last one always is, what can we do in the next year that might make a really big difference? Because I do feel that urgency is so overwhelming right now. I think in some cases it's made us frozen, but especially when you're talking about a lack of revenue or a lack of access to capital or financing, There are a lot of tools out there that I think a lot of smaller cities just don't know how to access. And that's really a communication problem. So one of the things that I work with is the US Economic Development Administration has a revolving loan program that goes out on a regional basis. Maybe there's an entity that covers a number of counties in your region that has access to that funding, which is low cost loans for buying property or investing in small businesses. And there's stuff out there. But then there's crowdfunding, which I think is an amazing opportunity for both real estate investment and for supporting small businesses. And then obviously pairing that with philanthropy. So I do think that finance question is a really important piece, but we have to make sure that we know what is that vision we're trying to achieve, who we want to benefit from the investments that we're going to make, which is a really important conversation to have. And then really getting in detail with the people in our community who might be able to serve those roles.
Thank you. Thank you.
Jennifer, I want to pull you into this conversation. There is a couple of questions that relate to population density asked by our attendees. And one asked, can you talk about the population density needed to make micro manufacturing viable? I know that Ilana, you spoke a lot about that, but as I think about Mayor Alcinore's comments about Opelousas, I think about how the population has shifted in that town, like I'm sure lots of towns. And so one of the concerns has to be, as we consider businesses, small businesses, placemaking, how does population density and shifting population density factor into this, and what should mayors like ours do in response to that?
Sure. No, it's a great question. And I think when we think about population density, we mean a bunch of things, right? So one, it's about who's living in a place and where do they live and how do you create density in those kind of hubs and nodes that actually can support small businesses, right? So if you're living in a neighborhood, you're going to need a range of goods and services within a certain radius. So part of it is, how do we encourage more people to live, particularly let's use, a downtown area that's maybe been disinvested in and that has a lot of, empty housing, empty shops because, of either population loss in the region or because in many places, the population might still be in the region. It's just not where it was before. It's just not in the urban area. So all these things wind up being so tangled up with each other though. But one, all right, well, what's your strategy for how to bring more people to live, say, in your downtown area? And that can be, all sorts of different housing programs, affordable housing programs, trust programs, land trust programs that preserve that affordability. So that's part of it. But then when we talk about the density, it's also about, well, who else is going to be in that place too? What about the workforce, right? If you have workers in that can support businesses at a certain time of day, how do they fit into the picture? And then there's also visitors. For a lot of small towns, particularly, they have a lot of great assets. Maybe they have outdoor assets or historic assets or something else that's bringing visitors to town as well that can support those businesses. So none of these things necessarily have to be mutually exclusive either. But the bottom line is you have to make the kind of investments that are going to bring that kind of foot traffic. And that looks different in different places. And that's why this whole place strategy is so important, and listening to what the people who are there actually need and want, because it might not always be what you think it is. And it's constantly getting under that, like, well, why? Why is that the case? Somebody could say something and you keep probing why. Because, the reasons people may not be even patronizing businesses that are there could be myriad reasons. Maybe they have lack of access. Whether it's public transportation or a street grid that doesn't promote good walkability or bikeability or something else. Maybe it was a place that was completely cut off by a major roadway, for example. Maybe it could be because they feel, unsafe as a pedestrian because of the automobile traffic that's prevalent in the place. Maybe there's vacant lots that could be repurposed. So, or maybe it's something else altogether, but this is where that trust building and the actually engaging with people to really get under the hood of why that density isn't there now, why people aren't living there, why they might not be patronizing local businesses, why they might not be visiting, and then try to take it from there to do all these things that everybody was talking about, starting even with the small things of how can you make even those small improvements to start to see, show people that investment's happening, that we're listening, that we're trying to make change. And that in turn can lead to those larger kind of investments that then can help drive the population and other kinds of density that you need.
Sort of, Ilana, if you wanted to chime in on that, if you do, let me know, just gesture.
Sure.
But there's another sort of related question.
Yeah, I mean, I just, I would say that specific to micro manufacturing, it works everywhere, right? I think about it in terms of place-based answers, right? Place-based economic development is where my passion lies. So I always think about it from the perspective of what kind of businesses can help our place, our downtown, our neighborhood, Main Street, whatever it is, the commercial center of our community, become an energized place that people love to be. So I think about where those two things come together. We've worked in rural communities, right, where people mostly want to have these businesses in their basement or their shed. And that's a totally acceptable and fine answer. It's just a different economic strategy. It's more about helping individuals increase their income in their household as opposed to creating a place, a downtown where people come together. And one of the things that excites me about small scale manufacturing is that you can do both of them. You don't have to. I always talk about it from the three legs, right? There's the small business support we can provide, the real estate that they need to come together in a community, and then the capital that they need to be able to grow and thrive. So population density agnostic, but really an amazing opportunity to do more than just grow businesses, but also create these places we love.
I've got this sort of this related question that was asked, and that is that there's a person that's attending that said, look, I live in Prairieville, Louisiana. That's an unincorporated community. Was formerly a rural community, but it transitioned very, very quickly as a suburban community. And it's grown a lot, but it doesn't have a downtown area. So unlike when we talk to Mayor Elsinore, Mayor Vedrine, this person says, well, what do we do? We've got public spaces in terms of schools and a few ballparks, but how do we create a sense of community through placemaking?
And I'll take a quick stab at that and certainly welcome lots of other feedback on this. I think there's two steps to think about. What can you do right now to start bringing people together? And all you need is a big field for that, honestly. And two, what can you do long term? There are tons of suburban communities that were, historically bedroom communities or more rural areas that became suburban that are right now thinking about how to create a downtown for themselves. So that's very hot on the sort of in the community to figure this out. That can be a long-term plan to design it, to work with the community to create it, and to identify where that needs to be in the community. But the community can also come together. The Reclaiming the Civic Commons project that Wendy was talking about is a phenomenal collection of examples to do this. And from my perspective, if you create a place, also Mayor Vedrine was talking about, right? The pavilion where people come together, where programming can happen, where you're starting to build an epicenter where you can bring vendors, right? The small scale manufacturers and the music and the food to bring people together regularly. All of a sudden, you're starting to create that center even without the buildings.
Yeah, I would echo those comments. It's really community is where you're at, and that's where you start. Detroit's 150 or so square miles. So like downtown from where I'm sitting is a 25-minute car ride away. So, and for most Detroiters, it is like that. So, so the emphasis on your neighborhood, where you kind of the locus of where you are at most of the time is just probably one of the best place to start, given what you've described.
I want to circle back, Wendy, since you're talking, there's a question that was sort of directed to a comment you made earlier. I saw you had begun typing an answer, but I want to bring it to the screen and the conversation, and it's around community trust, and it's something that you touched on, and the question goes to, what can communities do to build this sort of community trust? And, communities have all sorts of reasons not to have trust, not trusting elected officials, not trusting some people because of their socioeconomic status or their race, and we've got lots of mistrust for all sorts of reasons. And to be successful, sounds like you have to build that community trust. How do you go about doing that?
Yeah, it was a great question. And I was starting to type something in. I thought, oh my gosh, I could write a book like Ilana here and Jennifer, who I hope will help me out.
You should write the book. Yes.
But no, I think about this a lot. And, one of the things that I think we learned over the years is something I would just call relentlessly showing up. And it goes a long way that people begin to understand and can build a trustful relationship, whether you're a philanthropy or public sector or, other community actor, when you're not just trying to do, a drive-by, fly-by-night kind of engagement, that you're really meaningfully thinking about over a long period of time, how do I enter into community with intention and try to listen to understand before even doing anything. And candidly, that was a little bit hard for a philanthropy like ours to learn. It took some time. But now I think particularly in parts of the city, folks have seen that we're not there just to, do a thing. We are there to understand your community. How can we best partner to support your work, not, our vision of what should happen. And so those are some of the things I would certainly want to lift up. The third thing I think is really important, particularly when you're working in neighborhoods, is, and I think Ilana alluded to this, a cup of coffee goes a long way talking with neighborhood and community leaders. A cup of coffee, a cupcake, whatever it requires.
Yes.
To sit down with people and again, build authentic relationships.
We've got 1 minute left, and I'm going to toss out one question and see if we can get a quick response to it. And it'll be our last one, and that is, this person's very complimentary, and this says that this has been a truly inspiring presentation. But ask, what advice would you give a philanthropist or a potential philanthropist as they consider investing in a community, a park, the arts, investing in a city park? What advice would you give them in terms of who should they involve or engage for this potential gift to be a success? Now, whoever answers got to do it within 60 seconds. No pressure.
I'm curious to hear what a non-philanthropist has to say. So I was going to say, you should answer it. My answer is sit down with the people in the community. I mean, it has to start with the community and it has to end with the community. So I love the question, but to become a civic entrepreneur, it's really, right, the question that we do as an entrepreneur is we do user research. Tech businesses do user research, and user research is the technique we've adopted in Recast Your City, which is you have a set of questions, you go out and you have that cup of coffee and you have one-on-one interview conversations with people to really give them this open-ended opportunity to say what they want, and to build buy-in, but also to find the partners for implementation. And so that's my one big hope, is to not just think about the outcome, but who should benefit and the conversations you need to have to get there.
Yeah, I would just
what a discussion.
how it builds on efforts that are already happening in a community too, so that you can constantly be creating that synergy as opposed to just sort of sprinkling everything all around, really looking at what's happening in this community and how does my philanthropy, how does this effort really make 1 + 1 = 5, right? And really have that kind of effect to build on what's there.
Well, what a discussion. We had such a depth of expertise here today from our speakers who brought all of their research and experience from so many places, sharing inspiring stories of communities that have played to their strengths to bring themselves new life, to our mayors who brought their deep knowledge of how communities right here in Louisiana are already using their techniques and how they might incorporate new ones in the future. Thank you, Jennifer, Ilana, Wendy, Mayor Alcindor, Mayor Vedrine. You can go ahead and turn off your cameras and mics.
One quick statement.
Absolutely, go right ahead, Mayor.
To all those who participated in this, and the listeners, may God watch over you, and happy Thanksgiving to each of you and your families as we continue to walk on this earth with his blessings.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. And I'm noticing in the Q&A, Mayor, you got quite the fan club following you as well. So you get bonus points today for bringing a crowd. I want to again thank our sponsors and especially our attendees for engaging in this discussion. We have a poll that will begin momentarily. We want to hear from everyone, but participation is required if you are seeking continuing education credit. And that poll is up now. I'll read those questions as our panelists, again, just can't thank them enough for their support. I'll read the questions for our poll. Number one is describe your role in placemaking initiatives. Question number one is, answer number one option is planner, designer, practitioner. B is elected official. C, government employee. D, community advocate or other. Next, what is the greatest challenge you've experienced in realizing placemaking initiatives? Lack of funding, lack of capacity to manage projects, lack of interest, lack of leadership. And then finally, the third question after attending today's session, how prepared do you feel to bring these ideas to your own community? A, ready to run with these in my community. B, more prepared than before the session, but still need to learn more about bringing these to my community. And finally, C, not ready yet. We will allow a moment for people to respond. Our behind the scenes team will share the results when most have responded. If you are an attorney or certified floodplain manager, please fill out the survey that will appear when you close the Zoom window so that we can help you get continuing education credit. All right, I see the poll results are starting to come in. And we see that most folks were planners, designers, practitioners. We had about 39% of those. Government employees, community advocates, a good crowd. Many of you talked about lack of funding as being one of the greatest challenges and lack of leadership, two of the bigger areas. And then as it relates to our third question after attending today's session, how prepared do you feel? Most more prepared than before the session, but still more to do, seemed to be the most popular response from everyone. Thank you everyone for participating and sharing your knowledge and experience with us. Don't worry if your questions weren't addressed in today's conversation. We will post them in this session's Q&A forum. And please, everyone, don't forget to attend the next two sessions of the summit. Today, shortly after this, at 12:30 p.m. Central, we will have the Fresh Takes for the Future panel dedicated to showcasing the work of recent graduates and young professionals. Author, activist, and poet Leslie Honore will open by performing an original piece. Following that, to close out the summit, we have Changing Climate, Changing Landscape, and Evolving Thought, Flood Mitigation in a Changing World. These speakers will prompt us to rethink how we manage water and flood risk and what innovative approaches we can use in the future. Join us at 2 p.m. Central. You will not want to miss this conversation about one of the most pressing issues of today. Finally, the summit is made possible by our summit sponsors and CPEX members. Contributions help keep this vital educational opportunity accessible to all. If you would like to help support CPEX's important work, text CPEX to the number on your screen or scan the QR code. Again, we hope to see you again shortly at 12:30 p.m. Central. Thank you again for joining us today.